Winning Plays is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, special playoff edition of the Winning Plays podcast is here. My name is Robb, and boy, do we have a good one for you here, folks. We have not the Miami Heat, the Atlanta Hawks waiting for the Celtics in round one, opening up game one on Saturday afternoon. And with us here on the pod, Sean Grande, the radio voice of the Boston Celtics, the sometimes TV voice of the Boston Celtics, who will be on the call with Max on Sports Hub starting at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Sean, how surprised are you? I guess I'd say, how disappointed that you are not going to Miami.
That's the extent of the intro. I thought a star of my magnitude I thought it would be a bigger intro.
Did I go over the top? Was that too little? I thought I did.
I thought there would be more like a musical entrance or something big, like to say, this is the biggest edition of this podcast. We've never had anybody of this magnitude grace this stage before.
Putting Forsberg to shame for sure.
About to, but you know what? You do you, I guess, is the thing. I wasn't shocked that it was Atlanta. I leaning Miami the same way everybody was. You know, we all participated by all. I mean, all the internet geeks who stay up late at night all participated in the, hey, who's it going to be? And there's an 82% chance it's going to be this team because we didn't have anything to do for a couple of weeks. And, you know, it was going to funnel down to these two teams anyway. I do think I did take great amusement at the fear, for lack of a better term, of Miami. And I know that came from past history and not people that actually, you know, watched Miami the last couple of months. And I get it. Listen, if you're a Celtics fan, and you have, say, a job or kids and a life, you're probably not watching a lot of Miami Heat basketball on League Pass. But I wasn't overall that concerned about Miami. And the bigger point with Miami and Atlanta, Rob, is this. If the Celtics struggle against Miami or Atlanta, and this is a 7-game series in the first round, and skating to get by, then they aren't who we think they are. And they're not going to beat Milwaukee anyway. So I flash back all the way back to the year 2022 when everybody was afraid of playing Brooklyn in the first round. And the Celtics, to a man, said, you know what? Hell with that. Let's get the 2 seed. We'll play who we play. And I think we know how that turned out.
I don't know, Sean. I mean, what about the 2008 Celtics? Pushed to 7 games by the Atlanta Hawks. Not that we're going to go there, but it's funny that that this team should have it that much more together against this Hawks team to the point where being like, yeah, if this goes over 5 games, this would be a surprise. You
know, what's funny is that this team, the Celtics team, with the exception of obviously Brogdon and some of the new pieces, how many playoff minutes, forget their age, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, how many playoff minutes have they played together? The 08 team struggled, and I'm going to put an asterisk on that and circle back to it. The 08 team struggled, finger quotes for those of you watching video, with Atlanta. They had never played a playoff game together before. And everything had come so easy to them in the regular season. Looking back, should we have been as surprised? I mean, it was this fluke 7-game series the way it was the 1960 World Series with the Pirates and Yankees, right? With the Yankees would win their games 15-0, and then the Pirates would win by a single run. If you look back at the scoring differential of that series, I think the Celtics outscored Atlanta by like 9 points a game, some crazy number, even though it went 7 games because Atlanta won 3 close games in Atlanta. What's amazing is that the Celtics lost, their first 6 road games in the playoffs.
After going Detroit,
30, I think they were 31-10 in the regular season that year on the road. And then went 0-6, which, by the way, just underscores how historically good last year's Celtics team was one of, if not, you can make a case that was the best road team, wait for it, in NBA history. When you look at their record and margin of victory in the regular season and add the playoffs to it, the Celtics won 8 road playoff games, the hardest thing to do. The Celtics, you're talking about 08, the greatest team ever, blah, blah, blah. They won 2 road games. Two. Or was it 3? Won the Lakers, 2 in Detroit. And
2 in Detroit, 1 in the Lakers.
3. Right. That team won 3 road games. Last year's team won 8 road games in the playoffs. Obviously still didn't win, but that's how ridiculously dominant they were.
And 2 elimination games on the road of like a game 6 and a game 7 on the road.
Yep.
That's unprecedented stuff. But yeah, it is. But I think you nailed it. Like this is a series where with the Heat, everyone was expecting that because they just know Jimmy Butler and Bam scare them over understandably so, given what they've done over the last 2 or 3 years against the Celtics.
Spo versus Joe.
Exactly. Spo versus Joe. Like, there's no question there. Like, Spo is as scary as a head coach to match up against out of anyone in this league right now, as far as the postseason goes. But when you just, like you said, when you look at the Heat this year, when you look at the fact that Kevin Love was prominently involved at the end of the regular season there, and I think that kind of tells you the story in terms of, how desperate they are. And now you look at this Hawks team, and I don't know, Sean, like, you watch that game on Tuesday night, and you just look at that roster now with Sadiq Bey there, and now you have Quinn Snyder. Like, this is a team that, understandably, everyone thought was going to be like a 4 or a 5 seed this year, not a 7 team. Now, I think with Snyder there, you can kind of see them maybe looking more like that team there. That's a team the Celtics should still beat, but they at least can certainly do some things offensively that not a lot of teams in the East outside of the contender fold can do.
I don't think you're insulting the Hawks by saying, I think people that think the Celtics are going to win the series, I think it could be short. I don't think you're insulting the Hawks. I think it's an indication that the Celtics were the best team in the NBA in the regular season. They had the best net rating. They had the best scoring margin. They were number 2 in offense. They were number 2 in defense. All these, they put together a regular season profile of teams that go on to win the championship. Doesn't mean they will. It just means that they did. Of course, they did last year in the second half too, and obviously came a few games short. But it's a bad, like for most teams, it's a bad matchup for Atlanta because they can score. Of course they can score. But if the Celtics are cooking offensively, as we saw in the regular season games, it should be difficult. Obviously, to what degree? When the Celtics win the rebounding battle, you can't beat them. So that, to me, is the key number in the series. If Atlanta with Capella and Collins, if they can end up coming up with some big rebound margins the way they did against Miami, that's where they're going to win games in the series. But if the rebounding is close, the series won't be.
I agree. So, like, based off of that, and this is something, I guess, more of the playoffs wise, I want to get your big picture on, since we're not going to look totally ahead here, but I think it's important to look at just the complexion of this team now as they're healthy now heading into the postseason. So my question number 1 here is, like, starting in this series, you expect them, do you expect them to, start small as they have been for the majority of the year at this point? And B, as this postseason goes on, do you expect them to kind of stick to that? Do you think that is going to be the group that Joe rolls with Al at the 5 and Derek White to start games as long as he can? Or do you think they will, if eventually, make a shift back to the Robb Al double big look, depending on opponent, or just depending on maybe out of the gate here? I don't know.
I think it's going to depend on opponent, but I think you're sticking with the primary starting lineup because, again, if you put together the best profile of any team in the NBA and you have the best regular season, and this is the starting 5 you used, there's no real reason to change it. And by the way, it's not, people get too carried away about the starting lineup. If it's not working, guess what? It's not like you can't put Robb in. It's not like soccer, right? Once you put Robb in and make a substitution, you can't change again. So Robb's sitting right there. And amazing, I tweeted this one out the other day, that Robb, for the Celtic fans that were hoping that the Celtics would bubble wrap him this year so he didn't get hurt, Rob Williams finished 50th in minutes played? No. 150th in minutes played? No. 300th in the NBA in minutes played. 299 dudes played more minutes this year in the league than Rob Williams did. Almost, by the way, Luke Cornett. Robb played 20 more minutes than Luke Cornett this year. So if you wanted him fresh and healthy, that certainly worked out.
And that is, I think, just the biggest factor right now as far as you compare this year to last year. And beyond the personnel, Derek White's more comfortable. Malcolm Brogdon is obviously a huge weapon coming off the bench, but we haven't seen Rob Williams healthy in the postseason for 3-4 years now. Like, you go last year, he was never there with the knee. 2 years ago, he was out by, he's playing on the toe situation against the Nets, blocking 8 shots, but can barely move there. Just having this guy being able to be controlled like that from a minute standpoint all year long, and for the team to still get the second best record in the league, I guess that kind of just shows the strength and the depth that Brad Stevens put together here, and how, well lined up here that they are to just play whatever way they want any given night.
Robb is not the best player on this team, but simply go back to last year when the Celtics put together the most as dominant a run as I have ever seen. Outplaying, outperforming statistically and in all other ways the 08 team for that 35 game stretch. Rob Williams was healthy. The night he got hurt was the night the Celtics finished their climb from 11th in the East to the top spot in the East. And from that point on, the Celtics were good, but they were never dominant, again, the way they were for that 35-game run. And what did that coincide with? That coincided with Rob Williams getting hurt, not being completely healthy, seeing dogs go crazy when just discussing the idea.
Brings the best out of him.
Just discussing the idea of Rob. Are you concerned about Rob in the playoffs, buddy? Is that what it is? Well, we're safe here. Rob's that you need all the pieces in place, but Rob's role, it's more like you can't really substitute for what Rob does because there aren't a lot of guys in the league that do what Rob does.
No. Right now, for I guess the whole rotation seems to be relatively set. We think it is if Rob's coming off the bench, Brogdon's coming off the bench, Grant, I presume, would be coming off the bench. Who do you see emerging as a potential wild card for this team? I guess even in this series of the postseason round, there are options. Everyone, I think, has had their moment as far as the deep bench this year. You got Payne Pritchard putting up triple doubles in the last game of the year. We know Sam Hauser's really seemed to find a shot again.
I'll say this one. I'll say what we've been saying. What Max and I have been saying. I've been saying it for a while. Blake Griffin's going to win the Celtics playoff game somewhere. And you know where I don't know if it's going to be in this series. If it happens, if we're just all looking ahead, but that's what we can do. I guarantee you, Blake Griffin is going to take a charge on Giannis at some point. That's going to come at an important point in one of those games. I mean, he's been too valuable. He's been too at certain spots. Think about the beginning of the year when the Celtics were winning. The Celtics had that great start on back-to-back games. Why did they have that great start on back-to-back games? Blake was starting all those games. Al didn't play once. Blake was the fifth starter, right? He was like the junk balling fifth starter that you call on to pitch the day game after the night game. And he played on those back-to-backs, and the Celtics won those games early in the year. And, I think those are the things that are going to happen. Brogdon's going to win a playoff game with the Celtics at some point. And this is, I think, what the scary part. Instead of being afraid of other teams, maybe other teams should be afraid of the Celtics because you're looking at, Derek White and Brogdon and all these people you name who could win you a playoff game. And we haven't even talked about Tatum and Brown and Al having the best, one of the best 36-year-old three-point shooting seasons ever. And by the way, playoff Al is lying in wait. I don't do this hot take theater stuff, as you know, but I did come up with one that I tweeted and said on the air, which is, you watch, mark my words, Al's going to shoot more free throws in the playoffs than he did in the entire regular season because his game is going to change to what is necessary when the time comes.
I mean, the man knows. I didn't really look at that number closely during the regular season until just now. 21 free throws. That's a guy 21. And as far as and it wasn't even you could count the number of post-ups he had all year against guys his size, maybe on one hand. And that's just smart. That's just smart. Like you said, it's that's a 36, 37-year-old knowing how to be okay, how do I save my body? How do I make sure I'm ready to go? I'm not gonna.
He went 7 weeks. I was doing TV in Dallas in the game in January in Dallas, and he got fouled in the paint shooting, and we were going to commercial, and I said, just don't go anywhere because you're about to see history. He went. There's the OKC home game, right, middle of November, and that Dallas road game was January 6th, maybe somewhere around there. He didn't shoot a free throw between those two marks. That ended a streak of hundreds of minutes that Al played without attempting a free throw when he took those free throws in Dallas. So he absolutely had if you wanted Al and Robb bubble wrapped throughout the course of the season, you got it. And then people will say, well, you don't want Jason Tatum to play all those minutes. And then if he misses a game for Deuce's birthday party, then people are going to go crazy about that. But that's the nature of the beast, right? People just go indiscriminately crazy on social media. How much complaining and concern, vitriol, tension, all of it was aimed at the Celtics throughout the course of this year. And they were the best team. Imagine if they had not had a good year. Imagine if they had been Dallas or Toronto or one of these teams that really underperformed. The remarkable thing about the Celtics here was that in August, people thought Boston would be the best team. And then you had the trilogy hit. Gallinari injury, Rob Williams injury out for the first half, and then the unthinkable 2 days before training camp. And everybody jumped off the Celtics bandwagon, and rightly so. What happened? they were the best team anyway throughout the course of the year. And, the record is the record, and Milwaukee got home court. And that's great because I thought Joe had a great answer because he said, but I've been saying the whole time, what happened? What happened to the team? Well, somebody else won 20 in a row. That's what happened. Milwaukee had that crazy run, and they won more close games than the Celtics did. And the Celtics, everyone points to Houston, right? Because it's recency bias. Oh, the Houston game, they lost the Houston game, and that game in Utah, whatever. To me, I can't help but I feel instinctively, I go back to those 3 home games at Christmas that started that homestand, the 2 Orlando games.
Orlando's, yeah.
And the Indiana game. That's to me, is like, those are the games that were kind of like, there was definitely a little, and it's hard to maintain for 82. But that was the little Club Med vacation in there that cost them the number 1 seed, and doesn't matter. I mean, I think they demonstrated in that game in Milwaukee at the end of March that maybe it doesn't matter.
Take a quick break now to hear from our sponsor at Winning Place, FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official partner of Major League Baseball. And new customers in Massachusetts can get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston, and you can finally bet on all your favorite sports, from the money line to point spreads to player props and more. The FanDuel app, it's very easy. You can download it right on your phone, and you can pull up everything in a quick, whether you want to bet on the games, on props, everything is within your fingertips within a few seconds. It's very easy to use. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. Don't miss your chance to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make every moment more. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Well, Joe Mazzulla kind of screwed himself over here, starting out 21-5. I think that's, when you look at the big picture here, it's like they looked so good out of the gate that it is impossible expectations for themselves.
You're saying he screwed himself. What if they had started 13-13?
Then he's not the permanent head coach.
Doesn't know what he's doing. It's a disaster. So it was almost no choice but to start. And by the way, teams that lose in the finals, not unusual. Or they have somebody to play for. When the team won in 08, they were told coming back, well, you're not going to do that again. You're not going to do that again. And the 08 team, but Garnett and all those guys said, really? And by the way, that was Paul Pierce's best year, was 09. And Garnett was dominant. They said, really? We're not going to do that again. And they were even better. 27-2 start. And so they were just locked. And you can't, it's like going up by 20 in the first quarter. Everyone knows now. When you go up by 20 in the first quarter, 9 times out of 10, you don't then go up by 30. The lead comes back. And that's how 82-game seasons work. And we're in the load management era, and got to look at things differently. Not, total points versus points per game. I may have trolled the trollers by throwing some fish food into the tank on that, just to watch people lose their freaking minds over that. But it was a fun discussion, if nothing else. Like that whole thing, it was so hysterical because I'm a totals person. And the reason I've been pushing that this year is because I think we have to start thinking differently about the NBA and the load management era, that we have to put much more value on the actual accomplishment and not what somebody did per game or per minute they were in there. That's why I threw the Giannis thing in there. I'm like, all right, Tatum led in total points. Tatum scored more than anybody else. Embiid scored more points per game. Giannis scored more points per minute. So for the people who were saying, hey, it should be per, I said, well, what about Giannis then? Because he scored more points per minute. But first of all, Embiid's the MVP. He should be the MVP. I hope he is, all the above. But I think we have to start looking at totals, if for no other reason than guys aren't playing 80 games anymore. And it really does matter. But what I found, what was interesting, is the people that were losing their mind about points per game, what's the only argument you think that I saw online for all the people that went crazy, B-Rob? What's the argument for points per game determining the scoring champion? So the same thing over and over. What I saw was, well, that's the way it's always been done. And that might be the worst answer ever for anything. Not just that, for anything. Because it's the way it's always done, because things would be a little bit different in the league if they were done, and in baseball and other sports if we always did them the way they were done. But it started with me thinking about Aaron Judge last year. That Aaron Judge didn't lead baseball with .42 home runs per game. And by the way, people are saying, well, baseball still uses batting average. That's not the right comparison because we still use shooting percentage and 3-point field goal percentage. But someone says, well, would you rather, should we not use batting average and like hits? Should we use total hits? I said, well, I'm in favor of total hits versus hits per game.
Yeah, that's just not even like no one knows, right? You couldn't hear that once ever about it.
It doesn't mean anything. Every other sport
goals per game for hockey, like
absurd. Hey, Connor McDavid scored a point. What? Well, Pasternak, which I guess shouldn't be on the power play, I'm told. Pasternak scored what, 0.74 goals per game? No, he scored 60. So I didn't mind in this case being sort of a disruptor in that there's nothing wrong with looking at things differently because things change and things evolve. And people want to make it partisan because that's what we're all trained to do right now. Like that was an anti-Joel Embiid thing. It's absurd. He's the MVP. Is anybody suggesting Tatum is in the top 3 in MVP? He's not. But as far as I'm concerned, he should be the scoring champion because he scored more points. It's a good way to determine the champion. The guy who did.
Well, hopefully we'll see the NBA, the Player Association obviously will want to see more games played when it comes to recognition. And I think this is maybe a crusade that hopefully will last a few more years. And hopefully we get a few more people coming to the side that probably honestly makes a lot more sense when you look at as far as a guy's value and just that type of a title for the league. But all right, let's go here. What is your not biggest concern? What is your biggest question about this team heading into the postseason right now? What is the thing you're most intrigued by, whether it's Joe in the postseason, whether it's closing crunch time lineups? Like what sticks out to you in terms of like what intrigues you in terms of how this group can handle a certain situation or a certain strategy?
Well, I think they're going to be dependent on they're going to be bad shooting nights. And I really, throughout the course of the year, became a little tired of when they'd win 7 in a row. Then they would lose a game in which they went 9 for 35, right, from 3. And people would say, oh, they're too dependent on the 3, live by the 3, die, but they'll never do anything shooting like that. They just won 7 games in a row doing that. Like, I think I was big. Scal and I were kind of big early in the year on this, on where the 3s come from. Like, are you getting the paint touches first?
Right.
Because that was a big thing that we would even have debates with the coaching staff about the ball touching the paint and the ball moving and where the 3s come from. But there's going to be some bad 3-point shooting nights. That's going to happen. And if it's bad enough, it's going to cost the Celtics playoff games, and that will happen. So I think the concern is probably more what we can't see right now. The concern is an injury that when we look back in history, we remember, oh, yeah, game 2 in Atlanta when so-and-so got hurt. Or this could happen to Giannis. This could happen to – you never know, right? I always go with this conversational track because I had this conversation with somebody on opening night in 2017. And said, what do you think of the new season that's about to start? I said, well, this is what I think will happen, but something big is going to happen that we don't have any idea. And 5 minutes later, into the first game is the Gordon Hayward injury that obviously changed Celtics history, certainly. So I don't have a ton of concerns. I think the Celtics are the best team. I picked Milwaukee last year for most of the year, and I still think I've said, this is what I said. We had this conversation October 13th that we're having 6 months later. If the only team that I can see beating the Celtics 4 times is Milwaukee, I think they're the only team that can do it. I think Phoenix and the Suns are going to be a trendy pick and a popular pick, and I get it. That starting lineup is awesome. I am of the belief that the players the Suns need to win the championship, and by that I mean beat Boston or Milwaukee, they traded to Brooklyn to get Durant. If you give me that team with Bridges and Johnson, but I think they're still.
Do you like them getting out of the West, though? I was going to ask you next. Like, what's your West pick here? Like, do you?
I think Phoenix is a smart pick, but here we are talking about guys slipping on banana peels and the stuff we can't predict. We think Kevin Durant's going to play every game in 38 minutes a game, because if he does, great, that's awesome for everybody. But based on history,
50-50 shot probably at this point.
Yeah, I love the West. That the West is a dumpster fire or wide open, however you want to say, is great. The Lakers are legit to make a real run at it. Obviously, they got Golden State and they're Rocket now. Is everybody trending towards Golden State the same way Celtic fans were afraid of Miami? That they're not really watching Golden State play this year? I don't know. It's safe, right? Miami being trouble is a safe thing to say. Golden State being a pick in the West, that's a safe pick because they've been there before. But watching this, are they suddenly going to start being a dominant road team after being horrific on the road all year? Like, there are reasons these things happen. But again, major health. Steph, Durant, Tatum, Giannis, Embiid. Are all of these guys going to play every game and play 40 minutes a game? Or is somebody going to get hurt that's going to change history?
Probably feel the best about Tatum on that list in terms of the guys is going to stay healthy. Or at least Tatum and Giannis. I mean, Giannis seems to be, especially in the playoffs, is one who's just able to play through almost anything. And but yeah, like when you look at it is just wild to me though for the East, the juggernaut is like if the Celtics are arguably gonna have to beat the two best teams in a league before you even get to the finals.
You can make a case that Cleveland, by the way, is the fourth best team.
Sure.
The three best teams are certainly in the East. Cleveland's in that conversation for fourth.
It is. You wonder if that would, from a matchup standpoint with Milwaukee, I'm really curious to see, assuming they get by the Knicks, which I expect them to do with Randall beat up here, like what kind of challenge will they give the Bucks in the second round? Like, are they able to take a couple games there? It's like, we know what Mitchell can do. What can Garland do with like a real supporting cast around him? If
the Celtics beat Philadelphia in the second round, they're going to fire Doc. And he got the third best team in the league with a team. Did the Sixers win loss-wise? Did they overachieve or underachieve? They certainly didn't underachieve. No. With the bench they have and the way they played and load management and things like that. I mean, do we think James Harden is MVP James Harden? No. By the way, that game Embiid had against the Celtics, that wasn't an outlier. There were a lot of nights this year. Embiid went berserk and the Sixers won by 2 or 3.
Right.
They're not that good. Doc got them in with they're the third best team in the league with all their flaws. But the West has had this for a lot of years. So they've had all the best teams. Now the East is going to have to deal with it, and the Eastern Conference champion is going to, the Celtics again are going to have to beat the third best team and the best team just to get to the finals.
Well, we will be listening to you the whole way around. Now, tell us the plan for the playoffs for you here. You're going to be on the call on the radio side. Are we going to hear you on TV at all? Is this game?
Is there a plan?
Is there a plan? Yeah. Is there a plan for this?
Is there any news on this today?
I listen. Things seem to tend to pop up. I'm just curious if you're in the loop on this or not.
Well, I'm not really sure who's in the loop. I don't think the dog is in the loop. The plan was that essentially I used up all the TV games that I was going to do this year. My role this year on TV, as I've tried to tell anybody who would ask, is to keep anything I can do to keep Mike's run going. If I took some heat off him by doing 25 games this year and he didn't have to travel, that was the goal. Obviously, we ran into a little situation here where we thought Mike would be good and ready to go for Atlanta for game 3 and game 4. That didn't happen, so I am committed elsewhere. So you're going to get some John Wallach. Also, we had to gamble on the schedule too. If you remember last year, the Brooklyn series, we played Saturday, Monday down there, and you never really know. You have to make commitments. So I have an event. Showtime had an option on me that they exercised for next weekend, so I could not slide over and do TV, and that's what happened with the games this week. And I think the big picture is that you're going to get everybody in some different combinations. And I think, B-Rob, what I would say about this year was what we learned, what we knew all along, which is that between me, Mike, Scal, Max, Eddie, Abby, we're all one big interchangeable group.
Hell of a team right there.
You can make it work. And that's the whole point. So you can. Abby's done games with me on radio. Obviously, I've done games with Scal or Eddie on TV. Abby can play any part. Max in years past has gone over to TV. He did a game with Scal this year. So I think I'm pretty pleased and psyched about our little broadcast family and our ability to be interchangeable. Not unlike we're the Brad Stevens group, right? We're just all interchangeable. We're positionless. We're just interchangeable.
Very deep, very versatile. No,
it's a whole bunch of Derek Whites.
It is high net ratings. All right. Well, first round, you'll get the local call of the Celtics all postseason long, luckily, with Sean and Max. So be tuned for that. You can get the local call on TV as well, on NBC's Sports Boston in the first round. Sean Grande at Sean Grande I can't PBB. What is it?
Play-by-play, man.
Play-by-play.
PBP.
PBP. I can't even pronounce it right now. PBP on Twitter. This Tab Maven. Thank you for joining us on the Winning Plays Pod. Hopefully we'll catch you if we can get you out of your busy schedule down the line here during this postseason run.
Just trying to get your views up, man. That's what I'm here. Just a little.
Morris Ferguson dragging us down.
Sprinkled on your corner of the world.
All right. Thanks, Sean.